All right. Wow. Good morning. We're continuing on in our series in 1 Peter, and it's going to take us a little while. So I was reflecting on this, right? I mean, I think about the same number of minutes are going to need to be used to preach through this. Now, it'll either be spread across a lot of Sundays or a few Sundays, right? So I think we're going to aim for more of a lot of Sundays, because even the next few verses, I thought, oh boy, there's some stuff I can't just kind of like skip over. Because one of the things, all right, I'm just going to be honest with you, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that just is easy to skip over, just because it's just hard. It's just difficult to understand. It's challenging. Like what in the world? And I'm going to read a verse. I'm going to read a chunk in just a moment. In the last couple verses, you're going to go, well, what? Now, I thought about including that because I'm going to go through the whole chunk. I don't think I am. Come back next week. If when I read this, you're like, yeah, what in the world is that all about? Come back next week. Actually, come back next week anyway, because really, make it a part of your discipline, right? We have our habits: Bible reading, prayer, fellowship, evangelism, fasting, and generosity. This is fellowship, right? So it should be a part of your habit anyhow. But let me read. We're in 1 Peter chapter 4, so you can start turning there. And we remember the context, the broader context of this book. Peter is writing to believers in what's modern-day central and western Turkey, but he identifies them by their Roman provinces of the time: Galatia, Bithynia, Cappadocia, Pontus, and others. And he's writing to Christians who are of both I would say, although there's some disagreement, who are from both a Jewish and a Gentile ethnic and religious background. So you've got Jewish people who are Jews, right? And they've got that background. And then you've got Gentiles who aren't Jews and probably were pagans, probably had a variety of different, sort of a smorgasbord of religious and spiritual beliefs and practices. And they've all become Christians, right? And so now they're understood in the frames of reference of the people of God. I'm sorry, all of a sudden I'm not feeling 100%. I apologize. I'm okay, but just if I pause for a second, it just kind of hit me. I'm not feeling 100% all of a sudden. So just if I act bizarre, I'm not trying to be bizarre. Just letting you know what's going on. And so anyhow, they're coming together. They are a part of God's people, and Peter, being a Jewish Christian, is pulling on and drawing into the Jewish past, which forms the understanding of the Christian present and should help form our understanding of our Christian present as well. And so he refers to them as aliens and strangers or exiles in the world. The frame of reference that they have around what is now different from those around them, whether they be Jews or Gentiles, because they've accepted Christ as Lord. And they've accepted the truth of the gospel, that Jesus is God, died on a cross for sin, rose again on the third day, ascended into heaven, has poured out his Spirit, and a new covenant is in force. And so he's writing to them saying, as this sort of exiled, foreign, strange people of God in the world, how do we live? And we live with the hope of bodily resurrection, just like Jesus's. And so we hold this life loosely. We can submit to authority, even if it's not kind to us. And we can live in peace and in joy. And so chapter 4, verse 1 continues on this theme that's throughout the whole letter. Peter writes, "Since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking. For whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live for the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for human passions, but for the will of God. The time that is past suffices for doing what the Gentiles want to do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. With respect to this, they are surprised when you do not join them in the same flood of debauchery, and they malign you. But they will give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is why the gospel was preached even to those who are dead, that though judged in the flesh, the way people are, they might live in the spirit the way God does." Those are the last verses. Well, what's that about? We're going to park that for next week. I'm just going to make that call. All right? And what we want to do is really focus on this since you've suffered in the flesh, hey, live differently. Live differently. And I could kind of summarize it. Well, no, let's just take it verse by verse. Therefore, since Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking. For whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. All right, let's stop right there. We've already talked about identifying ourselves with Christ. We've talked about that in the past weeks. And so we don't need to kick that horse yet again. But what I want to talk about is whoever has suffered in the flesh is done with sin or has ceased with sin. Well, what? Hold on just a second. I mean, golly, I still sin. Like, what's that about? Well, on the one hand, I want to talk about a level of commitment. If you have a level of commitment to Christ, that means that even if people were to physically beat you for it, like, that's a pretty significant level of commitment. If you were at the pub and, it's a drinking party, as it were, and you're like, no, I'm having one, that's it, or I'm not having any. I'll have a lemonade, please. If you're like, hey, why aren't you drinking? You're like, oh, because I follow Jesus, and and so that's just not something, I don't do drunkenness. I used to, but I don't do that anymore. Like, what, you're not going to drink with us? Hey guys, let's beat them up. Okay, first of all, that's probably not going to happen in 21st century Britain. Probably. It might, depending on the people, depending on the pub, I don't know. But at least in Dorking, that's highly unlikely, I think. Right? But if you're like willing to get a broken nose in a pub brawl where you don't really like, when you're not going to like, yeah, I'm going to defend myself. I got my, like, you're probably pretty committed to your discipleship, right? Would we acknowledge that? That's a level of commitment that is significant. Now, that's going to be right here. Let's talk for a moment about the pain and discomfort of denying yourself a temptation. And in order to do that, first we need to talk about temptation. Temptation is when we have a desire that's pursuing a particular fulfillment. That desire might be an evil desire. You might be tempted, like we talked about last week, you might be tempted to take a sharp thing and poke someone with it, right? In which case, you don't get to live with us because you can't be trusted. When you're tempted to do that bad thing, you do it, and that's bad, that's stabbing, you can't. All right? So sometimes we're tempted, we have a desire that's unwholesome, that's just straight out of bounds. Other times we have desires that are very wholesome, they're good, they're right, and they're proper. But they might not have a legitimate fulfillment potential. So for instance, sex is an easy one. That's a legitimate desire. But it might not have a contextually appropriate fulfillment. Right? And so you go, I've got to deny myself the fulfillment of that holy desire. It's a good desire, but it doesn't have a holy opportunity to fulfill. And so I need to be self-controlled. And that's painful. I mean, we have to be able to be tempted with things that aren't necessarily evil in and of themselves in order for Jesus himself to have been tempted, right? Jesus was tempted in the wilderness. He hadn't eaten for 40 days, and Satan comes along and says, take these stones and turn them into bread. I mean, you can do that. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Except that Satan was the one who was enticing him to do it. Jesus said he came to do the will of the one who sent him. The kinds of supernatural and profound potential and power that Jesus has and expresses is to be expressed under the will of the Father, not his own will, or let alone Satan's will. And the other temptations, like, hey, throw yourself off of the temple so that the angels will prove your identity. Because the scripture says, he won't let you, knock your foot against a stone. And Jesus rejects that temptation to validate, to prove his identity in submission to Satan. Satan says, here's the kingdoms of the world. I will give them all to you. Just bow the knee to me. Well, the Father's already going to give Jesus the nations of the world. But what was he going to do? Pursue the cross? Or bow the knee to the adversary? He was being tempted with good, wholesome things that God the Father was going to give him anyway. Most of the things that we're tempted with aren't necessarily horrible things in and of themselves. They're good things that God desires to give us anyway, but the pursuit of them is either within God's will or not. Fair? Okay, so, when we're sitting here and we go, all right, well, we're being tempted. I don't know if you're like me, but there have been times when I've denied myself the fulfillment of a temptation, and it is uncomfortable. It's psychologically uncomfortable. It's mentally uncomfortable. It's emotionally uncomfortable. It's physically uncomfortable. To say no to something that I want to say yes to is uncomfortable. It's even more uncomfortable when we live in a culture that promotes indulging your senses, that promotes a lack of impulse control. Everything on your phone is designed to sucker you into giving into your impulses. I think I could do another round of mahjong. I know someone else probably needs the loo, but I think I could, probably get through at least another tile or two, you know what I'm saying? Everything's around perpetuating your engagement, which means diluting your impulse control, which we might call diluting your self-control. And so we indulge our impulses for that dopamine hit. And it's not just our phones, it's our food. It's our drink, it's so many other things. Our culture promotes a lack of impulse control. That's what makes our economy go. And we need that so that our economy can outpace other economies and we can feel secure in the world. Isn't that interesting? In a pursuit of security, we lose security. Isn't it like that with the evil one? There's something that God has to offer us, but we feel a bit shaky about his path because it's like crucifixion. And so we listen to the adversary and we pursue it in a way that we shouldn't and end up insecure. And so we here as Christians, we've said we're going to take that way of thinking and that can sit over here. We're going to say, I'm going to embrace this notion of bodily resurrection because Jesus was raised. I'm going to live according to a different framework. And rather than indulging my impulses, like everyone around me, I'm going to have control of my impulse indulgence so as to live within the will of the Father and have the true security that actually I'm so desirous of. Because right now, most of us live according to the fickle whims of the most enticing prompt in our life. And those prompts are largely to get your attention in order to sell it to somebody else. We are the chattel. Our attention is the product. and we're giving it away for dopamine hits. And someone else is profiting off of your attention, and you're losing your self-control. You're losing your agency. But to not indulge it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it actually hurts. So this is why we have this Christian discipline at St. John's of fasting. Fasting isn't just about hunger striking God until he gives us something we're looking for. Right? Fasting is a way of gaining body mastery. Saying, I know how to live in discomfort with joy, contentment, and remaining civilized. Because I get hangry. About 11:30 in the morning, if I haven't eaten, I'm like, yo, I need food, and I need it now. And it's obvious. My whole family will tell you. You know, and it's a thing. To practice fasting is like, even if I'm hungry, and even if I'm distracted by my hunger, and even if my blood sugar is dipped, and there's a real biological reason that I am cranky as all get out and can't think of much else. Reasons aren't excuses. I'm still held accountable to be a decent human being. I can't take a sharp thing and poke someone with it and be like, well, it was 11:35 and I hadn't eaten. Right? You don't understand, I had a late night. Okay, well, yeah, you had a late night. That sucks, we've all had that. You still have to be a decent human being. My football team lost, that's why I punched her. No, that doesn't work. Right? And just because your punch is emotional rather than physical doesn't mean it's not abusive. Right? And so when we learn to endure suffering, and when we learn to endure pain, when we learn to bring our body in submission to our will, which is being in submission to God's will, we can become increasingly done with sin. We'll never arrive fully. Please don't misunderstand. We believe in bodily resurrection, and that's when we arrive. Till the day we die, we are going to grapple, we're going to struggle with sin. And that burden doesn't get lighter, but we can get stronger. 100 kg is still 100 kg, but you might be able to lift it more easily if you're stronger. Right? That struggle of sin is never going to be lighter, but you can get stronger through the Holy Spirit's empowerment and our participation with it in things like fasting. Now, some of you, I'm just going to tack this on, a little fun one on the side. Some of you, it might be the inverse of fasting. Fasting might be really easy for you. You can go 15 hours staying really busy and not thinking about food at all, and not realizing you've actually become a real jerk. And you actually just need to eat some flipping food, like healthy food, and not just a bag of crisps or buttons or something like that. And you need to bring your body into submission. Submit your body to your will. And say, no, I'm going to eat, and I'm going to eat well. I'm not just going to slug back, a bag of Haribo and C4, something like that, and be like, that'll get me. And don't get me wrong, I've been known to do that. So I'm not, this isn't judgment. go, man, oh my gosh, it's already like whatever o'clock and I haven't eaten anything. Well, everyone in this room is an adult, just about. There's one of you. So, but old enough. Feed yourself. Feed yourself properly. If you're not eating, it should be intentional for the purpose of fasting. Right? Not out of neglect of self. But this whole thing of suffering in the flesh, training our body, Paul says, I beat my body and make it my slave. This whole idea of submitting your body to your will, which is being submitted to God. And if we can endure discomfort and pain, then we can grow in self-control and grow in our godliness. And the reason to do this is to live the rest of our time in the flesh, no longer for human passions, but for the will of God, right? And the time that has passed suffices for doing what the Gentiles want to do. And it's talking about, listen, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. Listen, I don't know what of that list you resonate with. I don't know your past. I'm not going to make a judgment about it. But for those of you who are younger and you've grown up in the church, you've grown up with some bit of faith, you've grown up in the discipline of Christian faith and practice, this might be a hard thing for you. Some of you have come to faith older, like, no, I've drank plenty for myself, and it got me nowhere. Now, I've actually done a fair few of these things. I don't really want to talk about it, to be honest. It's a bit embarrassing. And yeah, the time that was passed was sufficient. I don't need any more of that. Because it was death and it was destruction in my life, and I don't need to be persuaded. Some of you who are younger, like, I hate to say it, Peter, but that sounds kind of exciting. There's this film that I saw, and it showed some of this stuff, and it was like, that's gross, but not all at the same time. I can say that's normal. That's normal. It's normal to be curious about these things. It's normal to be desirous about these things because our body wants indulgence, right? It wants to feel good. It wants dopamine. It wants adrenaline. It wants all those experiences. You don't want to be left out. Right? It's normal to desire that. But God's called you to something peculiar. We might use the word holy to say it's different from that. And the will of God for you is in order to give something good to you and keep some harm from you. You say, well, hold on, Peter, because Jesus went to the cross. I think that's pretty harmful. Yeah, it is in a certain way. It is in a certain way. There's a difference between hurt and harm that I think is important. Now, Jesus' sacrifice was a particularly unique thing. Right? And so we want to retain its uniqueness. But there are things in life that hurt, but they are for our benefit. We might think of going to the dentist. We might think of getting surgery. Someone's taking a sharp thing and poking us with it. Right? And not going to jail for it. That's because it's healing. There's something in it that's important. If we spend our whole life avoiding discomfort, avoiding pain, avoiding hurt, first of all, we'll be unsuccessful. Second of all, we're not going to become the people that God has called us to be. And I'm not saying we should go out looking for mistreatment or pain or that God is out to harm us. But there will be a certain discomfort physically and socially, especially you guys who have grown up in the church and grown up in Christian faith and are curious about this stuff. There will be a pain and a discomfort in not doing it. there will be a pain and a discomfort if you do. Which pain and which discomfort do you want? Like, well, at least the pain and the discomfort of doing it is preceded by the ecstasy of doing it. So, buy now, pay later. I'm going to have all that goodness now. I'll pay for it later. That's fine. Whereas the economy of God is sort of pay now, buy later, I guess. Endure that discomfort now for the joy set before you of not having the baggage and the injury of having participated in these kinds of things. That makes sense? So basically, do you want to save up your money and buy something, or do you want to buy it on a credit card? That's kind of the question. Because you buy it on a credit card, you pay for it and then some. You save up for your money and you buy it, you just buy it outright and then you have the thing. If you want to get involved in drunkenness, drinking, parties, orgies, passions, living sensually, that sort of stuff, you have your joy up front and you're going to pay for it over the long haul. You deny yourself those things, yeah, you're going to pay for that, but the joy over the long haul is greater. That kind of makes sense? With that, because it is hard. It's hard. And there's not just the personal discomfort, but let's talk about verse 4. With respect to this, these other people that you live around, they're surprised when you don't join them. Well, what do you mean you're not coming to the club? What do you mean you're not coming to the pub? What do you mean you're not having another drink? What do you mean you're not going to try this? What do you mean you're not going to do that with her or him or whatever? What do you mean? Everyone does. It's fine. Well, because you're a Christian? Don't you know Christians hate people and are like responsible for all of the world's wars? Well, first of all, you're wrong. Second of all, no, I don't know that because it's not true. And they'll be like, what do you even like? You're practically Amish. But that's how the world's going to see you, right? I mean, you guys at work, at college, at school, right? What do you mean you're not going to do that? And that might not be only your friends, it might be your family for some of you guys. And your family's like, what do you mean? Here's another one. What do you mean? I'm buying them. Don't worry about it. Have another one. I love it when you're a little bit drunk. You're hilarious. Oh, man. Yo, that's tough. You're in a situation and a close friend or family member says, no, but I love it when you're doing these things. In other words, I love you when you're doing these things. If I don't, do you not love me? Hey, guess what? I think they do. I think they do. I think one of the things that we do as humans is we bond over shared experiences. We bond over shared experiences. And when we say, no, I'm not going to do that, we exclude ourselves. It feels really awkward. And it feels to others like a judgment. Which is wild. Why should it feel like a judgment? Because deep down inside, they know they shouldn't be doing it either. And deep down inside, they know if that you can say no, that they can say no as well. Deep down inside, they know they're just indulging their senses. Because that's all they've got in the world, because they don't have hope of bodily resurrection. When they die, that's it. They're done. They've got no hope. So why not do these things? And when you have the ability to say no, you demonstrate that it's possible for a human being to live a different way. It's possible for a human being to not be enslaved by their passions and impulses, and to be free and empowered to do something different. And that can be hard. Which is why that previous verse we talked about a couple weeks ago, always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason that the hope that is in you. We're able to do these things because Jesus rose in the body and his Spirit lives in us, so we will experience bodily resurrection. So we have hope, and we can say no today for the greater yes that is coming. We can endure discomfort today for the ecstasy that is to come. And it's not all misery and pain today. There's joy, and there's peace, there's contentment, and there's goodness, because we are no longer enslaved to our passions. We're no longer enslaved to the impulses that companies want us to indulge so they can make money off of us. But we are free to live our lives with God in peace. And so, I just want to encourage us this morning. I want to encourage us towards this discipline of fasting. Bringing our body into control. Not indulging our impulses, but submitting our body to our will, which is being submitted to God's will. That might mean you learn to deny yourself some things. It might mean you need to order your physical well-being appropriately. There might be reasons for our bad behavior, but there's no excuses. We need to take responsibility. We're adults here. All right, so that's thing number one. Thing number two, when we don't do the things that everyone around us is doing, that our friends and our family do, it's going to be uncomfortable. You'll have trained your body and your mind for that discomfort through fasting. Right? We can endure that for the hope that we have. Right? And we can do that because Jesus has done that and his Spirit lives in us. And so we can. So with that in mind, let's stand to sing as we prepare ourselves for confession.